Hello, YouTubers. Not all early Christians thought the age of the earth was 6,000 years old, made in 6 literal days. It's actually quite surprising to see the diversity in views among the early Orthodox Christians, particularly after Christianity began to separate itself from Judaism. In this video, I will address the views of two well-respected and influential early Christians. One of the earliest Christian apologists, Origen, sometimes described as the greatest genius the early church ever produced, had this to say about the account of creation described in Genesis. For who that has understanding will suppose that the first and second, third day, and the evening and the morning existed without a sun, a moon, and stars, and that the first day was, as it were, also without a sky. And who is so foolish as to suppose that God, after the manner of a husbandman, planted a paradise in Eden towards the east, and placed in it a tree of life, visible and palatable, so that one tasting of the fruit by the bodily teeth obtained life, and again, that one was a partaker of good and evil by masticating what was taken from the tree. And if God is said to walk in the paradise in the evening and Adam to hide himself under a tree, I do not suppose that anyone doubts that these things figuratively indicate certain mysteries, the history having taken place in appearance and not literally. So to be clear, one of the most well-respected and influential early Christians flat out rejected a literal interpretation of the creation account in Genesis. Believe it or not, the idea of evolution wasn't proposed by Darwin. It was proposed by the most influential Christian theologian in all of Christendom, Augustine of Hippo, over 1700 years ago, in a time when scientific understanding was very limited. And the literal meaning of Genesis, Augustine, in describing the topic at hand, writes, "The production of things in the course of time following the creation of the world." On this topic, the first point he makes is that the book of Genesis appropriately begins with water, from which all kinds of animals, plants, and trees are born and develop in time, each according to its nature. He's making the point that every type of animal, plant, and tree originally started with water and then gradually developed into their present forms. More pointedly, Augustine stated that the things that God had potentially created came forth in the course of time on different days according to their different kinds, and the rest of the earth was filled with its various kinds of creatures which produced their appropriate forms in due time. In other words, Augustine was saying that life started with simpler creatures and that, in due time, they developed into more complex creatures. Augustine repeats this point when he states, "It is obvious that, in accordance with those kinds of creatures which he first made, God makes many new things which he did not make then. It is thus that God unfolds the generations which he laid up in creation when he first founded it." So, in this passage, Augustine is describing new species coming from an old genus over long periods of time. That's evolution, folks. Let's not let Christianity be defined or thought of as anti-science. Instead, let us, as in times past, become the world's greatest scientists. Let men like Newton and Galileo rise to lead the world to a new age of enlightenment. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this video, please show your support by subscribing. Thanks once again.